All right, so you may be wondering, really? The Afterlife of Billy Fingers? Out of all the books that are available, this is the one that you choose to kick off our book study? Yeah, it is. Because it's a really amazing book. I love the way that it is formatted, kind of like a novel. I read this previously. It took me just an afternoon, a few hours in the afternoon. And it's about a sister who writes messages that she receives from her brother on the other side. And her brother was complete drug addict, alcoholic, no inspiration for recovery whatsoever. And it talks about his journey here on earth and then afterwards. Now, you may think, oh, wow, Sherrie, where's the fun in that? Tell us that, right? Well, you know what's happening in our congregation? We've recently lost a beloved member who's been with us for decades and decades. We have a couple of members in our community that are dealing with terminal illness and hospice. We have people of our community who have friends and family that are in hospice or dealing with terminal illness. And in our culture, the Western culture, we don't really talk about death. Death is kind of like one of those taboo things. You know, it's in the closet somewhere, but we don't really talk about it. And so what I want to do on this series is really just kind of open it up a little bit. Let's talk about death. What are your belief systems? What were your belief systems? What are they now? Are you open to changing them? Do you like what they are? Do you want to keep them? All of that is up for grabs. Because basically what we're going to have in this series is a discussion. A discussion about what do we think death is. What happens to us, and then what happens after we die. Ooh, I heard a good cell phone. So I'm going to go back with me in the beginning. I remember when I first realized that every living, breathing entity, being, dies. And then it was like, oh, that means I'm going to die, right? I used to have panic attacks. They were so severe that the only way to jolt myself out of it would be to run and smack into the wall. I literally did that because that was the only way I knew how to ground, because I didn't know anything about grounding at that point. Wow. So there's a lot of fear there about death. And then I remember the stories that my grandmother told me about her generation and her parents and her grandparents. That death was seen as a natural part of the cycle of life. When someone died, it wasn't hidden away. They were laid out in the person's home or family, and a party would happen. Everyone would come in, they'd bring food and drinks, and they'd be there with that body laid out, reminiscing about their lives, the different scrapes and scraps they got into together, the joy, what they'll miss about that person. And if it wasn't enough, they would take that body to somebody else's house and have another party. They accepted that this was a natural progression of our lives here on earth. Today, it's very separate. It's very compartmentalized. Something happens over there. We go and we do a brief visit, give our condolences, and we walk away. In Unity, we don't even like to say the word death. That's how kind of crazy we are. We say, they've transitioned on. That's what we use, right? Say, Jessica?
No, it's very confusing with transitioning.
Yes, transgender. Oh, you're dying? I'm like, no, okay. Or transition, yeah, exactly. So we need to, and you know I'm really big on this, calling it what it is. Calling it what it is. And it's an and, not one or the other. The person has died, and the essence of what they are has transitioned on. We can say that. It's an and. So let's talk about this. Let's look at this. Let's look at if we have any fears. Because everything that we are and do, temporary, my friends. It is all temporary. So the question is, where did we learn about an afterlife? Where do we learn to fear death? Well, for me it was family, those school friends, the ones that try to scare the bejeebus out of you. Or I don't know if this is appropriate, but remember those chiller, and the hand would come out of the grave, and it would be like those scary matinee movies at like 3 p.m, and it was all about scaring you, and it had a lot to do with death and coming back and zombies and things like that. So, part of that is where we learn about death and where we learn to fear death. And the other piece, say that again, Joe? Is at church. Yeah. We learn to fear death at church. Yeah, and I talk about embedded theology. When I say embedded, we think of something that is really deep within, placed deep within. And theology is about the understanding of what God is. So when I say our fear about death really comes from our embedded theology, this is the stuff that we were taught from the time we were really little. Death is big business in regular churches. Did you know that? Yes. Big business. Why is it big business? Got to decide where you're going.
Pay your way out.
Pay it out. That's right. That's right. Get on the good side there. And one of the things that I love about this book, there's a quote here that says, "How do I know my life wasn't some punishment for past transgressions? Well, because there's no such thing. You're not on earth to be punished. It's not about sin and punishment. That's a human concept." Did you hear that? That's a human concept. Something man made up. And humans make stuff up, and then they believe it. Yeah. And he also says pain is just part of the human experience. As natural as breath or eyesight or blood that moves through your veins. Pain is part of the earth deal. So you don't really need to be overly concerned about it. A new way of looking at this. Do we still believe that we need a savior? Someone who has maybe paid their debt for us because we believe we're born in original sin. And so we need a get out of jail clause, right? Someone who's going to do that for us. Or do we choose to say, you know what? These are what our early church fathers taught. Because they needed to standardize. They needed to control. And that's what they did. Do we allow ourselves to put that really to rest, as opposed to kind of that niggling that still comes up from time to time? Because you know it does. Let's be clear. It still bubbles up. So I'm asking you, look at that. Look at that bubble. Is that truth? Is that your truth? And if it's not, challenge it. Because there is no judgment day. One of the things Billy says in this about it is, he says, there's no judgment day. Viewing my life has become surprisingly enjoyable because I have an absolute acceptance of myself and everything I've done. This is a drug addict, drug dealer that is saying these words from the afterlife. It would have been nice if I'd been able to have this attitude when I was alive. But I guess I wasn't that advanced. Because at this point, there's no question in my mind that there is a divine presence. There are beings in the atmosphere around me, wise, kind, super evolved beings whose loving custody I'm now in. No judgment day. If we label someone's life as horrible and bad, That would be a really good poster child for it, wouldn't he? And he's saying there is no judgment, that he's surrounded by unconditional love. There is no heaven, there is no hell. There is just oneness. There is just oneness. Now, we can choose to take that on board, spin it around. Does it resonate? Does it feel right? Or we can hold on to that fear that drives a billion-dollar religious industry as it saves people's souls. So how do we awaken? How do we awaken? What does this do for us? If we shift our belief about death, who we are, why we're here, what that can do for us is awaken us and empower us while we are on the journey here, today. Another quote is that he tells his sister, here's another secret for you. There is no right way for things to turn out. Some endings are happier, some not so happy. But it's not just the happiness percentage that matters. Okay, my Unity people, I got to say that again. It's not just the happiness percentage that matters. It's the music of it. And when I read it's the music of it, it's the journey. It's about being in that present moment awareness. Remembering, why did you choose to come here? Why are you here? What is it for you to learn while you're here? In his book, he also talks about soul agreements. He believes that there are souls that make agreements to incarnate at the same time, to take on different roles for people to learn. Sometimes it's the perpetrator. Sometimes it's the victim. Sometimes it's the rescuer. And that can change throughout a given lifetime. So, that parent that you may be holding in your heart of not being there for you, of not loving you the way that you may have wanted to be loved. Maybe that was the agreement. Maybe there was something for you to learn from that. So here we are. I like this one. The quote is, "A lot of people judged me, but I was dealing with circumstances I had signed up to explore before I was born. Don't be overly concerned about how you look in the eyes of others. People will pretty much see you as they will. Play your part in the cosmic drama, but never forget that you choose the way you see yourself. You choose the way you see yourself." And you don't want somebody else to cast someone else in the role that you signed up for. Right? Powerful stuff. So, in questioning this, and what I wish for you when you do the groups that you sign up for, is that you give yourselves the opportunity to question, what do you believe? That you give yourselves the opportunity to speak it out loud, to shed light on it, to be able to dissipate some of that fear, some of that still embedded theology that you may be driving under. This is for you. Because what if you could live your life knowing that anything you did was not a mistake? Not a mistake. There were no wrong turns taken. No regrets. I don't know about you, but that worry that kind of percolates underneath me, gone. I can be in that present moment. I can see what is mine to do. What am I here to learn? What's in this for me? What's in that interaction with this individual? That opens up a whole new world. I want you to strut your stuff. That's why we do the work that we do. And I can't wait to hear about your journey through this book series. And I'm going to invite my lovely Miss Kelly to come on up and prepare us for meditation.